So I decided to make a short video today to discuss why I believe P. Diddy was acquitted of some of the counts against him in his criminal case, although he's found guilty of others. P. Diddy faced 5 criminal counts. The most serious counts were 2 counts of sex trafficking by force and a racketeering conspiracy. In other words, that he had engaged in a pattern and practice of criminal acts to engage in sex trafficking and to cover it up. Those 3 charges would have led to long sentences for him had he been convicted of them. It is likely that he faced almost certainly a sentence or a near life sentence if he was convicted. There are 2 more counts in that they're prostitution counts. He's guilty of transporting women to locations where they would engage in sex acts. These are less serious charges. There are serious charges, though. He could receive 10 years each in prison on each of these charges. But why was it that he was acquitted of the serious charges? I'm speculating here. I don't know. I wasn't present for the trial. I followed the news reports. I've never spoken to any of the lawyers or the jurors involved. But I think it's probably something like this. They viewed his conduct as wrong, immoral, and bad, but they felt that he was being overcharged. In other words, that the prosecution had charged him with more offenses than he was guilty of. They felt that the people who were involved with this were willing participants, that when they went to his apartment, some of them took money from him when they engaged in this behavior, that they knew what they were doing and they weren't coerced. And that's how the jury looked at the case. There was almost certainly strong testimony from the women that they did feel coercion. The jury did not accept that testimony, I think, partly because Sean Diddy Combs is a celebrity, partly because everyone who was involved in this behavior was paid for it. At least most of them were, it's my understanding. The jury felt, yes, he's guilty of some of these things, but to convict him of racketeering is to equate him with someone who was a participant in a violent street gang, or to equate him with someone who is a violent mobster. And the jury felt that the racketeering charge, the racketeer influence corrupt organizations charge, was an overreach. They also felt that he did not use force, fraud, or coercion to get the women to attend these parties and engage in these acts. That was disputed at trial. I think we have to trust the jury. The jury got the chance to look at the witnesses, evaluate their credibility, and frankly, Sean Combs was exceedingly lucky to avoid a life sentence in prison. I think that he avoided the life sentence because the jury felt that racketeering and the sexual coercion counts were simply excessive. They did find him guilty of engaging in prostitution, and he will serve significant time in prison for those counts. So the government essentially gets a win in the case. Diddy's defense lawyers get a win too, because they can say, but for us, it would have been worse. We made the mess not as bad as it could have been. And that's what criminal defense lawyers often do. They often try to mitigate disasters to make them less bad than they otherwise could have been. So, my hat's off to the defense. I suspect the case was overcharged. I suspect Mr. Combs will spend at least 10 years in prison. What he did was wrong. But he will not spend the rest of his life in a federal prison, along with the types of people who are in for life sentences: murderers, criminals, drug dealers, and people of that nature. Thank you.